just outside of Kansas City, in what was called Parkville, and it was Park College, and they had a work program, and when I went there, each person had 15 hours a week where they worked to pay for the tuition. And I knew I was trying to go to the ministry, and I said, no, I would like the toughest job you have that nobody else wants, because I think I'm going into the ministry and that's going to be the toughest job ever. And so they gave me a job of shoveling coal in a coal mine. And I worked there from 5 to 7 a.m., 7 days a week. Shoveling coal, I got pretty good at going like this, putting it into the bowl, into the bin. But that was in Kansas City. Yeah, it's Parkville. It's now incorporated into Kansas City. I don't know what else I should say about that.
You served at a church there, correct?
But it was very interesting. You know, I had what they called an African American church. It's what they used the term at that time. And so while I was there at college at Parkville, Kansas or Missouri, where I served this African American church, and I haven't thought about it for so long. I forget a lot of the things that happened there, but it was an interesting experience, and there was some problems because of racial prejudice, and that was one reason why I wanted to have it, so that I could be able to help out when I got back to Madison. And then when I got back to Madison and had a church there, then I helped organize an equal rights committee in Madison to help combat prejudice in Madison itself. I don't know what more, unless there's any questions anybody has.
What year was that in college?
Gosh, I think it was around 1960 or something like that.
1960?
Yeah, 60.
And that led to your civil rights marching in the South?
Pardon?
Then you marched in the South in the civil rights. What year would that be?
Yeah. I'm trying to remember what year that was.
60s.
I know
Yeah.
there are a lot of problems in connection with it.
Well, and you marched with Martin Luther King Jr.?
Yeah, March on Washington.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was in the, it just happened I was in the front row where he was when I joined the march. I just had been in Kenya for 3 months and got back the day before the March on Washington. And so I just joined up with that and went down to Washington, D.C. That was some interesting days. It's hard to believe today what it was like then. But when I was going to college in Kansas City, Missouri, did I mention that or not? That I wanted to serve the best way I could, and so there was an African American church, a black church, and so I became the pastor of that while I was going to college, my first year.
That was before World War II.
Yeah, yeah.
Was it?
No, not World War II. About 1960, I think. Wasn't it?
You were at Westminster in the 50s.
I was?
Yes.
So it would have been in the 40s.
Oh, then it must have been. I forget.
Were you a chaplain after the Kansas City? I bet you were.
I guess so. It was a long time ago.
It was.
And you went to Newfoundland, right?
Yeah, and I had an interesting experience up there. That was where, who was one that sent the first wireless message across the ocean?
Marconi.
Marconi, and that's where I was for a year or two. And what was I going to say about that?
Interesting experience in Newfoundland?
What?
In Newfoundland?
Yeah, I remember it was an interesting experience I had was, while I was up there, I served a little church that met in somebody's kitchen. So in the summertime, I sat on the stove to be the pastor there for them. In the wintertime, we had a different room. But while I was there, let's see what happened there now. I'm trying to remember what I did.
Was that when you were a chaplain?
Was
Because
that
when I
when
was
you,
a chaplain in the Army, it happened that the very day after I entered the chaplain, after finishing the seminary, Hitler committed suicide. He must have heard that I was in, and he knew the jig was up. And then the very next day, Tojo in Japan surrendered, and so they didn't know what to do with me, and I sat in New York City for about 3 months, and I had a good experience just visiting all the places in New York City, getting acquainted. And then ultimately, I was sent up to Newfoundland, and one of the interesting experiences I had there was every Thursday night we had a chapel service for the, not in the Army, but in the civilian, and there were 2 boys, about 12 years old, and each one would have a little piece they would say every Thursday night. And I thought, well, gee, that's nice. These boys learned this little piece. This is, of course, didn't mean anything I said, but it was just real cute. Have these little 12-year-old boys saying, and the thing that they would say every Thursday night was, it's a grand thing to be saved, to know it to, and to show it to. It's a grand thing to be saved. I thought, well, that's nice, and it sounded real nice. And then one day, I heard that the 2 boys got into a fight over something or another, and they started scrambling on the ground, and all of a sudden one of the boys stopped. He said, "Hey, we can't fight, we're Christian." And the other boy stopped and said, "Hey, that's right." And they stopped fighting and went down the hill hand in hand. I thought what a wonderful lesson that could be for a lot of adults if we could learn that. But there was just a great experience there. And then up a little farther beyond where I was stationed, there was a spot where Marconi sent across the first message. Oh, I think it was before I was there, I'm sure. But it's just an interesting experience there, and I haven't thought about the details of it for a long time. But give me about another half hour and I'll think of some more.
You had some problem with seating in the chapel, didn't you?
What?
You had some problems with where people sat in the chapel?
Oh, they had a system when I came there where the general had the front pew. He never came, but that was his pew reserved for him. And the lieutenant general sat in the second pew, and then the enlisted men sat in the back. And I got up my first Sunday there and saw what happened, and I said, "This doesn't go in the house of God. We are all equal here. I invited anybody to sit where they wanted to sit." And some of the officers got so angry that they boycotted the services. But we invited the men, and they all came and just sat wherever they wanted to. There were no special privileges or anything like that. But I didn't have much success with the officers after that.
So,
Didn't somebody come in and change that, where all the officers came then? Wasn't there a general that said something?
Oh, yeah, General, I know his name so well. But he he came into chapel his first Sunday, and there were no officers. And he said, "What in the world happened? What's happening here?" So I explained what happened, that they were mad at me because I was insisting anybody could sit anywhere they wanted to. And he was General Caleb Haynes. He'd been an outstanding general, a war hero during World War II in the South Pacific. And this was in his retirement days when he came to Fort Pepperell, in Newfoundland where I was. And when he came to chapel on Sunday, and no officers were there, he asked what it was. And he said, "I'm going to order them all back." And I said, "Oh, I don't want them to come because they have to." He said, "No," he said, "that's an order." So we issued an order, and he said, "I'm going to be sitting up here by the pulpit taking roll." And so he sat by the pulpit every Sunday taking roll, make sure that all the officers were in chapel, which was an interesting experience there. And so we had a great time there. Can't think of what else there was. A lot of other things happened.
Did the officers sit all over the chapel, or did they try to sit up in the front?
No, they sat all, I told the enlisted men to sit wherever they wanted to. And so then the officers had to fill in wherever there were empty seats. So it worked out okay.
So in the week after you started being a chaplain, both Hitler and Tojo both died or something. If they would have made you a chaplain a couple of years earlier,
that's what I told him.
Shorten the war. Saved a lot of lives.
Yeah. He must have heard I was in, of course, so that he knew the jig was up.
Wasn't there a story about you, how you became a chaplain?
The what?
How you became a chaplain, that you went to seminary because you wanted to, wasn't there a story about that where you...
Let's see. Well, the ruling of the church was that before they would ordain me as a chaplain, I had to serve a church parish for 1 year. So that's why then after I finished seminary, I served a church. I think that was maybe in Kansas City. I'm not sure. I have to think for a while on that. But I had what was called an African American church in Kansas City, a black church. And there's a lot of interesting experiences with that went on.